Truth Espresso, episode 305.
In a world gone bonkers.
It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started and...
Where the culture is a dumpster fire.
We're coming for your children.
And churches have lost their way.
I am really uncomfortable with the story of the crucifixion.
It's time to wake up with Truth Espresso.
Truth Espresso.
Your weekly shot of truth. And now your host, Daniel Minnick.
Hey there, friends, family foes, and of course, lurkers alike. This is your host, Daniel Minnick, coming at you with another episode of Truth Espresso. And I hope you enjoyed that week of Truth Espresso. 2 episodes there, a bonus one. That doesn't happen very often. And yes, at long last, this episode is going to be episode 3 of Manhattan Madness, covering the Trump trial. And when I started this little series covering the trial and didn't know how many episodes there would be on it, it was fresh off the verdict for the trial. And so I was just going to talk about the trial and give my opinions on it. But of course, as I mentioned, it's kind of a situation of drinking from a fire hose. And so now I find myself trapped in having to cover a lot of details about this thing until it's no longer relevant in the news. But I think it's important, especially for Christians, to look at this, to see things that, yes, we really need to evaluate claims, and we cannot just have flannel graph images of people involved. Regardless of your opinions, pro or con, about former president and current candidate Donald J. Trump, we should be able to evaluate things according to the truth of the Word of God, moral standards, the grace of God, justice, and even be able to see things that could be the flaws of human beings, but also to understand what justice on that should or should not look like. And given that, as of this recording, it's just a week after that shocking incident where I suspected this type of thing could eventually happen, and it actually did, where someone tried to assassinate Donald Trump, tried to shoot him, tried to snipe him, and he survived. And it seems, even according to him and many others, by divine intervention, by the providence of God. And so, yes, we can thank God for showing himself and the very fine parameters by which Trump is still alive and just has part of his right ear harmed rather than having a bullet through his brain. And so I don't want to have this episode to take the thunder away from current events, but I do want to continue covering the Manhattan Madness series to show that I'm not forgetting about it. I am working on it, and here we are. And so we're going to get into the actual proceedings of the trial. So on April 8th, 2024, Trump's team asked an appeals court to delay the trial and move it to a different venue because of the apparent bias of Judge Merchan against Donald Trump, and to suspend the gag order that he had placed on him before the trial began. Because Trump would frequently post on social media talking about it as a sham trial, complaining about the judge, complaining about some of the key witnesses, especially his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, that he is a convicted perjurer and stuff. And Judge Merchan believed, or purported to believe, that it was necessary to put a gag order on Trump for the sake of the safety of himself, his family, or the witnesses involved in the trial. So later that day on April 8th, Judge Lisbeth Gonzalez of the appeals court denied the request to delay the trial and move it to a different venue, like to take precedent away from Judge Merchan and assign it to a different judge. On April 10th, 2 days later, another judge from the appeals court denied a request to delay the trial again because Judge Merchan had not yet ruled on the motion to recuse himself. So Trump's team were trying whatever they can because they see this as a rigged trial to be able to get it to another venue that could potentially be more friendly or more unbiased in their eyes, but it seemed like the appeals court never saw things the way they saw it. And finally, the trial began on April 15th. And at the beginning, Judge Merchan declined to recuse himself from the case on that first day of the trial, so he ruled from the bench that he was not going to remove himself, despite complaints that he could not be a fair and impartial judge, and that his daughter had been making money off the trial, and that he himself had contributed to Democrat organizations. And 2 years earlier, Judge Merchan handled the Trump case involving tax fraud. Judge Merchan also oversaw a money laundering case involving Steve Bannon, who was a member of Trump's cabinet and just recently began serving a 4-month sentence in federal prison for contempt of Congress because he refused to appear before the J6 committee. Of course, some will bring up constitutional grounds that the J6 committee wasn't a legitimate committee of Congress because it only had 2 Republicans, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who are considered rhinos by people who would be more in Trump's camp, and that it functioned as a kangaroo court, and that because of the makeup of it, it also had no real authority to subpoena. On April 30th, the appeals court denied a request from Trump's team to halt the trial and to recuse Judge Merchan, so they appealed Judge Merchan's refusal to recuse himself, and the appeals court denied that, so the deck seemed to be stacked at this point. The cards were in favor of Judge Merchan, and the trial must go on. Judge Merchan demanded that Trump be present in court for each day of the trial. Of course, even if it wasn't actually Judge Merchan's purpose to tie Trump in court to keep him from campaigning, it still raises the question because Trump is a former president of the United States who also happened to be running a campaign for a second term as president. It really is next to impossible to carry out an unprecedented trial like this on a former president of the United States who is also currently running for that same office again. Judge Merchan denied Trump's request to be excused to attend his son Barron's high school graduation on May 17th. Now, Judge Merchan originally didn't say earlier on that an event like this was something he would deny, but he ultimately ended up denying it. So it's a sad thing that a former president on trial for a case that seems like it's related to strange stuff that doesn't seem like it's some kind of emergency that it has to be going on right now during campaign season. And the idea that he has to be present every day of the trial, forcing Trump to miss a once-in-a-lifetime event like his son graduating high school. But Trump had faced things like this in another trial where he couldn't attend a funeral. Now, Wednesdays were when the court would not be in session. Some have speculated that this was intentional to make sure Orthodox Jews who were potential jurors and would lean more conservatively would request to be excused from jury duty, because a long Friday in court could conflict with Shabbat, which is from sundown Friday through sundown Saturday. So there were some suspicions that the court picked Wednesday as the day off to try to force Orthodox Jews not to be able to qualify for the jury. Of course, we can't say yay or nay on this, but That's just what some people have speculated. And also, if you remember back from when Joe Biden had that 13-second debate challenge video that had 5 takes, in which one of the things he said was, "I heard you're free on Wednesdays." And then the Biden-Harris campaign even sold T-shirts that say, "Free on Wednesdays." And the irony of this is not lost. The irony is that it's obvious that they have had a hand in this whole debacle. Because if you remember from a previous episode, I talked about Matthew Colangelo, who was in the Biden DOJ and then quit that prestigious job to participate in this New York Manhattan trial.
Unbelievers now have no excuse to misinterpret the Bible. Like they ever did? Interpreting the Bible has never been easier or less expensive. Get your copy of What Does It Mean to Me? This teaches and demonstrates the importance of biblical interpretation. Proper biblical interpretation is the difference between truth and error, life and death, heaven and hell. This is created for your sinos. That's your Christians in name only. Readers will stop asking, "What does this mean to me?" and start asking, "What does it mean?" Get your copy of What Does It Mean to Me at trackplanet.com or on amazon.com today. You want to get this before it's too late.
So now on April 30th, Judge Merchan held Trump in contempt of court for allegedly violating the gag order based on some social media posts that he had made. And then on May 6th, Merchan said that Trump had violated his gag order for the 10th time and said that he could send Trump to jail, but he wanted to avoid that. So he said, quote, "Mr. Trump, it's important you understand. The last thing I want to do is put you in jail. You are the former president of the United States and possibly the next president as well," unquote. According to a CNN article, put a link to this in the show notes. On May 14th, the appeals court denied Trump's request to lift the gag order. And some of Trump's campaign supporters on that day and some congresspersons showed up outside the courtroom to speak on Trump's behalf because, of course, they weren't under a gag order. So basically, they wanted to be able to tell the media things that they figured perhaps Trump would get in trouble if he said. So now, I want to get into the part of the trial involving testimonies, and I'm going to start with prosecution testimonies. So one of the major testimonies was from that of David Pecker. He testified all 4 days of the week, April 22nd through 26th. So, of course, the 24th being Wednesday wasn't there, but 22nd, 23rd, 25th, 26th were all days of testimony from David Pecker. During the time of the hush money incidents while Trump was running for president in 2016, Pecker was CEO of American Media Incorporated, or AMI, and had some communications with Michael Cohen. Now remember, Michael Cohen was Trump's former lawyer who was involved in these hush money payments, and Michael Cohen would eventually also be a star witness for the prosecution. Michael Cohen had asked David Pecker to buy the rights to the Stormy Daniels affair story, but he didn't do it. Pecker testified that he had suppressed negative stories about Trump during the campaign, as he had done with other celebrities. So that was kind of some of what Pecker's business was, suppressing negative stories about well-known people. Pecker also said that he was the first contact for the hush money payments. Since he refused, that job ended up in Michael Cohen's hands. And then for the rest of April 26th, in court, 3 minor witnesses testified briefly after David Pecker finished. Next up, on April 30th and May 2nd, was Keith Davidson. Now, Keith Davidson was a lawyer for both Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, who I don't remember if I mentioned Karen McDougal much, but she was another hush money woman with whom Trump allegedly had an affair. Keith Davidson said that the Access Hollywood tape that the Washington Post released 1 month before the election in 2016 allowed Stormy Daniels to publish her story. Keith Davidson said he was the one who crafted the wording for the hush money agreement. Another witness on May 2nd, who was Douglas Dowse, was a computer forensics guy at the district attorney's office who examined Michael Cohen's phone records. Next witness was Hope Hicks on May 3rd. Hope Hicks, a former White House communications director, testified that what she reported in a Wall Street Journal interview just before the election about the Karen McDougal affair was what Trump pressured her to say, and that he tried to suppress both the Daniels and McDougal affairs from the media. She also said that the Access Hollywood tape hurt Trump's campaign. So basically, the prosecution's case is to try to make it so that the hush money stuff was instrumental in making sure that Trump got elected. It was election interference. And therefore, the hush money would count as election contributions. And that Trump really needed these stories kept out of the media, else he likely would not have won election. Now, the defense and Trump himself would contest that. On May 6th and May 7th, 3 minor witnesses testified, McConney, Tarasoff, and Franklin. And then finally, the star witness for the prosecution, Stormy Daniels herself, would testify on the rest of May 7th and for the day of May 9th. Stormy Daniels showed up in court wearing all black and looked disheveled, and she testified about the encounter with Donald Trump at the golf tournament in 2006. Trump, according to her testimony, invited her to his fancy penthouse hotel. She showed up and the two talked for 2 hours in his room, where Trump at some point mentioned that he could offer her an appearance on The Apprentice, and then she needed to go to the restroom. And so while Stormy Daniels was in the restroom, she snooped in Trump's toiletries bag, which she said that she regretted doing. What's interesting is that Stormy Daniels seems to remember details that one would think the average person would not remember, especially from this many years ago. Now, I'm not saying that Stormy Daniels is the average person. Of course, nor would Donald Trump be the average person, but I think the point stands. Daniels remembered from back in 2006 that she looked through Trump's toiletry bag in the hotel bathroom that he had Old Spice and Pert Plus. On the stand, she said, quote, "I thought that was both amusing and odd," unquote, because she wondered why someone like Trump would use a 2-in-1 shampoo. She also testified that there was a golden manicure set in the bag. She also remembered the black and white tiled. In a world full of woke coffee companies, where can you go to get that fresh, hot, caffeinated cup of bliss to start your day without giving your money to help woke causes? That's why Blackout Coffee supports the causes you care about while giving you great coffee. Blackout Coffee works directly with farmers and local cooperatives to provide only the freshest and most flavorful beans for direct trade goodness. Signature blends range from their smooth finish light roast to the brutal awakening dark roast and pitch black espresso dark roast. Blackout Coffee supports traditional American values, military, and first responders. For every bag you buy, Blackout Coffee will send 2 cups of coffee to active duty military members. You can also donate Blackout Coffee care packages directly to active military units from their website. Our men and women in uniform will thank you while they get to enjoy bold, premium coffee that cares for America, and so will you. For non-coffee drinkers or those who enjoy other hot beverages, Blackout Coffee offers an array of comforting loose-leaf teas, from old-fashioned Earl Grey to passion fruit peach black tea. They have everything a tea aficionado is after. Oh, and I can't gloss over their hot cocoa. Decadent flavors from dark chocolate to chocolate peppermint patty to chocolate cherry dump cake and even banana pudding. Perfect when cozying up under a warm blanket. During the summer months, you could just crank up your AC and get out your blanket. Well, you don't really have to do that to enjoy Blackout Coffee's hot cocoa all year round. Be awake, not woke, with a soothing hot cup of Blackout Coffee by going to truthhub.org/blackout or go to blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code TruthSpresso at checkout to get 20% off your order. That's truthhub.org/blackout. Or go to blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code TruthSpresso at checkout and save 20% on some incredible patriotic coffee, tea, or hot cocoa today. Floors and the big, beautiful wooden table. Once again, given the nature of her career for years with encounters with thousands of celebrities and bigwigs, I find it strange that she could remember these particular details. Hey, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that she's lying. It's just something that raises questions in my mind. Does she remember the furniture and toiletries for any number of other of her encounters with famous people? Look, it could all be true. I have no way of verifying who could be telling the truth here and who could be lying about this situation. She was testifying under oath, but that seems not to mean anything anymore with some people. After Stormy Daniels left the restroom and came back into the room, she noticed that Trump had, according to her, taken some of his clothes off and was sitting on the bed. And I'm going to avoid some of the details that she told the jury in her testimony. Allegedly, he also went between her and the room door, although Daniels says that she didn't feel threatened. However, she said that she somehow blacked out before the important stuff happened. Then her senses came back to her when she found herself on one side of the bed. At the time she mentioned blacking out, the media thought the defense would be able to use that to their advantage to question her memory. Like, you said you blacked out, so are you sure that some of these details that you're remembering, you're really remembering them? Of course, let me get all this straight. Stormy Daniels is an adult film star who has had thousands of fleeting partners. If this happened, it was Daniels being Daniels, right? If this encounter happened, it was just Daniels being Daniels. Yet this particular guy, Trump, whatever amount of truth there is to the story, seemed to be the most freaky, grotesque man that she has ever encountered. I mean, no one else even comes close. Of course, that makes some sense to anyone who despises Trump and wants anyone, to take him down by any means. When Daniels was describing the details of what she was doing and what Trump was doing, eventually Judge Merchan interrupted and told her to stop revealing more intimate details. He told her to focus on what questions were being asked and to give short enough answers to them. It seemed like Daniels wanted to shock the jury with details, and I'm sure the prosecution wanted this, the salacious bits, because they thought that it would get the jury in their favor regardless of if this was how things should run in the court. Daniels also said that she signed the hush money agreement against her will. Now, in cross-examination, the defense lawyers questioned her about why, given the nature of her career, the alleged encounter with Trump would be traumatic to her. She explained that everything prior to leaving the restroom seemed innocuous, such that the sight of Trump afterwards changed everything and was shockingly unexpected. So the jury was supposed to believe that when she first entered the room, it was all business, cordial conversations, and Trump even asked her questions about if her activities have affected her health, like did she have any STDs. But somehow all of those questions and him making offers about her being on his lucrative show, somehow that gave her no hint, allegedly, about what he was hoping for. And then somehow she was shocked after she left the restroom that he was ready for something. And then it's like, uh-oh. It's hard for me to believe, given what this woman does for a living. Now, after the cross-examination ended on May 9th, Trump's lawyers believed Daniels didn't heed the judge's instructions for what she should talk about, what details she should not include. Attorney Todd Blanche on Trump's team moved for a mistrial because he believed the details of the testimony were just intended to damage Trump in the eyes of the jury, apart from the actual charges of the case, what's actually relevant. Although Judge Merchan admitted that, quote, there were some things that probably would have been better off left unsaid, unquote, he said that a mistrial wasn't a necessary solution at this time. I'll provide some links to articles in the show notes, but of course, read some of these articles at your own discretion. They might, even they don't get into some details, but they get into more detail than I've gone into. In a world full of woke coffee companies, where can you go to get that fresh, hot, caffeinated cup of bliss to start your day without giving your money to help woke causes? That's why Blackout Coffee supports the causes you care about while giving you great coffee. Blackout Coffee works directly with farmers and local cooperatives to provide only the freshest and most flavorful beans for direct trade goodness. Signature blends range from their smooth finish light roast to the brutal awakening dark roast and pitch black espresso dark roast. Blackout Coffee supports traditional American values, military, and first responders. For every bag you buy, Blackout Coffee will send 2 cups of coffee to active duty military members. You can also donate Blackout Coffee care packages directly to active military units from their website. Our men and women in uniform will thank you while they get to enjoy bold, premium coffee that cares for America, and so will you. For non-coffee drinkers or those who enjoy other hot beverages, Blackout Coffee offers an array of comforting loose-leaf teas, from old-fashioned Earl Grey to passion fruit peach black tea. They have everything a tea aficionado is after. Oh, and I can't gloss over their hot cocoa. Decadent flavors from dark chocolate to chocolate peppermint patty to chocolate cherry dump cake and even banana pudding. Perfect when cozying up under a warm blanket. During the summer months, you could just crank up your AC and get out your blanket. Well, you don't really have to do that to enjoy Blackout Coffee's hot cocoa all year round. Be awake, not woke, with a soothing hot cup of blackout coffee by going to truthspresso.com/blackout, or go to blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code TruthSpresso at checkout to get 20% off your order. That's truthspresso.com/blackout. Or go to blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code TruthSpresso at checkout and save 20% on some incredible patriotic coffee, tea, or hot cocoa today. On May 9th, 3 minor witnesses testified. On May 10th, 4 other minor witnesses testified. And then, on May 13th, 14th, 16th, and 17th, another prosecution star witness testified. This was Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer. Cohen affirmed that he, Trump, and David Pecker colluded in the efforts to keep damaging stories about Trump out of the press. Cohen talked about how he would communicate with parties involved through various means continuously to suppress both the Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal stories. So he talked about how he would make phone calls, do text messages, do instant messaging apps, constantly handling this to show how involved he was in suppressing these stories. He was really working hard for Trump. Cohen also mentioned schemes that he and Trump discussed about how to process the payments to avoid having them go through the Trump organization for reasons of probably taxes and campaign finance laws. Cohen said that when Trump's CFO, Chief Financial Officer Alan Weisselberg, claimed he didn't have the money to pay Daniels, Cohen decided to make the payments. The reimbursements from Trump would then become retainer payments for lawyers' services after the election. Although Cohen didn't get the federal attorney job he wanted from Trump after Trump was elected, his career otherwise began to rise. He would get other higher profile clients and such, but Cohen was still sore toward Trump that Trump didn't give him the federal lawyer position that he was gunning for. Now, an interesting moment happened during cross-examination on May 16th. Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, challenged Cohen's claim that he called Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, on October 24th of 2016 to talk to Trump about the Stormy Daniels situation. So Blanche accused Cohen of lying. He basically shouted out, "That's a lie," and showed Cohen a phone record of a text message to Schiller about prank calls from a 14-year-old boy. There was only a call record for 1 minute and 36 seconds complaining about the prank calls. Michael Cohen insisted that during this time he also discussed the Daniels affair in that call. Blanche showed the jury the text messages where Cohen threatened to call the Secret Service and the prank-calling teenager pleaded him not to. And this was during the time where Cohen allegedly was having a conversation with Trump through Schiller about the Stormy Daniels affair. The short time period and the text messages didn't seem like a time when Cohen also would have a meaningful conversation with Schiller or Trump about anything else other than this annoying 14-year-old boy that he was threatening to call the Secret Service on to get him to stop prank calling. Blanche also got Cohen to admit to various lies because Cohen was an admitted and convicted perjurer who had faced prison time for it. So those were the prosecution's witnesses. And now, regrettably, I must admit that I do not at this time have enough notes to continue Manhattan Madness, because we're going to get into the defense testimonies and then, of course, the jury instructions, and that's pretty deep stuff. And so once I get the notes for detailing the defense witness testimony and all the details enough really to talk about the jury instructions, the verdict, and potential problems with the verdict and the letter after the verdict and sentencing schedule and all that stuff like that, we'll be able to do Manhattan Madness Part 4. And so I hope that you enjoyed this episode talking about part of the trial, the New York trial, over Donald Trump's campaign finance violations. And so stay tuned for the next episode of Truth Espresso, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Truth Espresso. Be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast app. Truth Espresso is a member of the Christian podcast community. Check out other great faith-building shows at christianpodcastcommunity.org.